Honestly unbalanced.
I would love to know some of the skills that you've acquired on the way to doing what you are. Like you're lots of nouns, aren't you? You're like a clothes designer, a chef, an author, all sorts of things. I don't know if chef's the right word. I always get confused about that. But you're lots of
Yeah, I
things.
wouldn't call myself a chef, but a home cook maybe.
But you're lots of things. And I read on one of your older posts that actually you've taught yourself to do most of it. And we'll talk about like how much you outsource later. But
Hmm.
it means you've learned a lot of new skills along the way. I just wondered if you could speak to, well, first, what skill you've enjoyed learning the most, and well, maybe then what skill you'd
I,
actually hate and resent.
yeah, sure. I mean, to answer your first kind of question on outsourcing, I don't outsource anything at the moment, and that probably is a nod to my own kind of want to control everything. Because obviously, to scale it or to change it, I will start to need outsourcing it. But the skills I've learned, there's so many varied ones. The one that I enjoy the most probably is food photography. So being able to have an idea that's in my head, whether it's how a dish looks or the caramel drizzle on a brownie or something, and just have it in my mind as what I want it to be like, and then try and bring that to life with photography. And what I love when I see other people's work or recipe photos or whatever it is the feeling that you get from seeing it. Either like, oh, that looks delicious, that's exactly what I want, or I wonder if I can do that. And so I love being able to transmit those feelings through photography with my own work. So that's probably my favorite one.
Before we move on to one that you maybe don't like so much, what was your approach in number one, teaching yourself that skill, and also making sure the work you did wasn't kind of just replication? That's so tempting, isn't it? Initially, and I think everyone has to do
Yeah.
that to some degree. Like even yoga teachers, you have to start by
Mhm.
replicating. But how did you develop that skill, and how did you then make it your own?
I think developing the skill, I just started when I started creating my own recipes. I just started with whatever I had. So it was like an iPhone 5 or something, and just taking a picture.
Five,
And
iPhone
then
five.
oh, I can't remember what it was,
God.
but it was definitely single digits. But just taking a picture of that, and then the more recipes I would create, the more feedback I would get just internally. I'd look at, I can even look at things that I did last month and be like, ooh, I'd change that, or I have a new lens for that, or a new composition or something for that layout. So just the more that I would do things and replicate them, the more I would learn through I really like that photo. And especially with recipes, it's fascinating because I can have a recipe that I love and I think is delicious. But if the photo's not that appealing, I can see the views on it are way down. Whereas I can have a
Mm.
really simple recipe that's kind of bog standard. And if the photo is really nice or aesthetic and visually appealing, the views on it skyrocket. And this is just like website picture views and stuff. So I just suppose taking feedback from that, being really curious as to what works, what doesn't. I started noticing when I was reading food books or magazines or looking online or looking on Pinterest, the things that would draw me in. So the things that I really liked seeing. So whether it was the contrast of colors or textures or the way things kind of looked a bit messy rather than picture perfect, which I really like with food. Like when it looks a little bit messy and kind of brownie slice that's half eaten and cut open and kind of oozing out in the middle. So just being really curious as to what it was that I liked. And then, like you mentioned, replication is something that I think is necessary when you first start out because you're just trying to copy what someone else has done that you've liked. And then the more that you do those kind of things, you start to pick up your own style of things. So probably similar to yoga's teaching, you might copy someone else's teaching style or words they use or sequences that they do. And then you start to feel or get feedback from students of what they like, what you prefer. And you can kind of start creating your own style off of that.
This is a bit of a segue on integrity, and maybe integrity is too strong a word. But you mentioned you mentioned there that you would notice that if the photo weren't necessarily good, but the recipe was good,
Mhm.
it didn't make a difference. Still, it would perform worse. Like, has there been a time where you've just thought, "I'm going to change a recipe to a recipe that I think is inferior because the photos will look better, and as such, it will get more views and more interaction and more engagement." Have you ever found that at all? I'm
Like,
sure most people in most disciplines have slightly done that. Even with yoga, yoga pose, I'll try and include a breakdown of the dramatic one because I know it will do better than if I break down chaturanga.
Yeah. So is that, sorry, just to clarify the question, is that have I changed a recipe because I know like, oh, this is going to do really well?
Like, yeah, well, have you taken a recipe and a
Hmm.
recipe that you know makes a better quality end
Hmm.
product, but change something about it that makes the product, like the end product, inferior, but looks more visually stimulating? So
I get you.
instead of like adding walnuts, adding
Yeah.
like blueberries, or like,
Oh yeah, all the
oh
time. And
really?
it's not so much that it's inferior with taste because it's down to preference. So I
Of
might
course.
think that a banana bread with pecans through is the best thing ever, but for someone else, they want chocolate chips or they want walnuts through or something, which I think, oh, that's a bit rubbish. But it's kind of a give and take of what people want to see and what they tell me, or I do question boxes and stuff like that of what people want to see and what I really like, because it's all based off my own personal preference and kind of blending those things together. So people will typically ask for, I don't know, an example would be like, can you make more recipes with tofu in? And I'm like, oh, I don't really eat tofu. I don't really like it, but I'll find a way. I'll find a way, whether it's putting like a silken tofu in a pasta sauce or something, which works really well. And I'll find a way that I can make it so that I like it, but it also appeases the audience and what they're looking for.
And what is your audience? Like, who's your demographic? Do you feel?
I would say that people similar to me, probably, or definitely me when I still worked in the kind of corporate world. So people who probably don't have, endless amounts of time to be in the kitchen, who want to cook for 1 to 2 people, who are interested in meal prep, kind of have a healthy focus, but still want it to be exciting and nourishing without kind of being dogmatic and strict, kind of like gym bro.
Mhm.
And yeah, people who I suppose enjoy the creativity side of it, of making something and having an end product which they can be really proud of, whether it's something that they're just going to have for themselves at their office desk, or whether it's, a bake that they might share for a birthday party or something like that.
On the other end of the skill question, like, because you say you don't outsource anything, which is well, I think we're probably similar. That I like to hold on to stuff. Like the only outsourcing I
Yeah.
do is occasionally like really mundane tasks, or like
Hmm.
very creative, like I need an artist, or like for something. Like, what skill have you acquired along the way that you think would be the first for you to kind of try and outsource when scaling begins on a more significant scale? What were you trying to get rid of straight away?
Yeah. Oh, probably. I want to say editing, but actually I enjoy editing. It just takes so much time. It
Mm.
might take 5 hours to film a recipe, and you're
Oh
taking a recipe
wow.
that is an hour and 10 minutes on a camera roll and trying to condense it into, if I'm doing a video cook along, it might be 20 minutes. If I'm doing a reel, it might be 6 seconds, but just trying to take those snippets of interest within that video and condense it down. And I think in order to do that, you'd need an editor who has an interest in food and has an interest in, I want that caramel drip or I want that slice. That's the bit that I want, rather than something which I might find that that's not important. So maybe possibly editing. I suppose the mundane tasks like emails and
Yeah.
admin, and like I've got maybe 600 recipes on the website now, and I find myself going back to old ones, updating photos, looking at how I've written the recipe out and being like, oh my goodness, I need to change that, and rewriting it and things like that. So things like that, spell checking, normal stuff like that, I would probably outsource because that's just a lot of time and probably tasks which don't maybe light me up.
Is there part what about some of that stuff is scary for you? 'Cause I think for a lot of people it's scary, the idea of like outsourcing.
Mm,
And I got so many layers. So let's go video editing. So the one is that you don't like the end product and you've invested money in it. Or even a fear
mhm,
for me is if I get someone to do something that is stylistic, that there comes a point in the future where either I can't afford them or they go off on a different path or like, and suddenly everything changes and I have to find someone else that would do it in an entirely different way.
mhm.
What about what scares you about some of those ideas?
Think it is like you've mentioned already, Adam, the fear of kind of letting go of control. And especially when it's something like this was kind of like a hobby for me and a bit of a side hustle and a passion. And then it kind of elevated into more of a career. And it's now something that I do every single day. And it's like my little baby. And I know it inside out. I know, yeah, all the aspects that I've done before, things that I want to do. I know how to do everything on a website or on the email, everything that I've done. I've been able to go in and change it, which is great, especially when you're starting out. But I think what scares me is not that, I'm sure there's lots of people who can do elements better than I can because that's their skill set, maybe video editing, for example, or like photo editing. Even if I take the raw picture, there's people who can edit it way better than I can. But I think it's releasing the control of having an image in my head, being so used to doing it all myself, and then giving that to somebody else.
Mm. It's horrible, isn't it? It's a horrible idea. But anyone I know that has had significant growth, they've outsourced huge
Oh,
amounts.
like, yeah,
And I started to
definitely.
outsource to kind of AI as well, a little bit. Like AI is
AI is
fascinating.
incredible. Yeah, I do use AI. I do use ChatGPT all the time, more so for ideas and being able to reword things in a different way. But yeah, I think AI is definitely going to take a massive focus in the future for outsourcing.
And I think some people tend to think AI is like cheating. And I think in the future, every company is using AI. It's almost like saying the
Hmm.
internet is cheating. Back in the day, people maybe thought that. Now, like it's just a non-negotiable. Every company will be using AI significantly. So the question will be is how you use AI and
How
what are
to
you
use
doing
it? Yeah,
beyond
I see
AI.
it. Yeah, I see it very much as like a conversation with my friends because I'll mostly be working by myself all day, and I might think like, oh, I want to make a new brownie recipe. Well, I've made these six, but what different ones can I do? A conversation that I would probably have with my friends or people online or put a question box out. And rather, I'll type it as ChatGPT and he'll give me or she'll give me this whole list of different types that I hadn't even thought of myself. And I think, yeah, that's brilliant. It's a different, I don't know if you can say opinion, but it's more options to choose from, I think.
Yeah, it is. Do you use OpenAI or something else?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do that mainly, but I've heard so many good things about Claude, which is like your
Yes, I've
pick.
heard of that too. Yeah, and there's loads of other digital ones as well that I keep hearing about.
And you can try. I don't know if you know that you can like train it. Like I've trained ChatGPT to write in my style completely. That's a
Yeah,
whole
the
other
more
as
you
well.
use it,
Well,
the
not just
more it
that, you
kind of
can you
learns
you can
you.
go deep, which is a whole other conversation. On the note of AI though, what I do before every podcast is without much expectation, I say to ChatGPT, "This is my podcast. You know it now. I'm going to be interviewing this guest later. What kind of questions, based on what you can find out about them, what you ask?" Okay, and normally, to be honest, 90% is rubbish. Okay, and they're all quite generic. But one that ChatGPT would like to ask you is what is the creative process for your menu creations or your recipe creations, whether that be flavors, ingredients, dishes?
Hmm.
What actually comes first as well? Is it you have an idea of a dish you want to create and then you center around it, or is it, oh, these are the flavors of the month, what I can create with them? Or you've said ingredients already in terms of like tofu, like you know that people want that and you build something around that. So yeah, I'd love to hear about your creative process. And then also afterwards, there's a follow up question. This is not Chat GPT, like how it then is related almost or comparable to how you might sequence a yoga class and what you're looking for
Yeah,
there.
sure. I think it starts for me, usually it starts for me with an end dish, and that can come from anything from I'm always reading food magazines or on Pinterest or scrolling through different food accounts who I really love, or like the free newspapers that you get in supermarkets with recipes in, or I'll be out for breakfast or lunch or dinner and I'll have a dish, and I always try and order things that I haven't had before or would never make at home. And it usually comes from that. And I think, oh, I absolutely loved that. I don't know, veg lasagna, for example. And whilst I'm eating it, I'll try and really break down like the flavors that are in there, the colors, the textures, how it was presented, or if it's in a magazine, you can see them. And then from that, I'll build it up in my own mind of which other ones have I had like this? What would I change about this? What would I add? What's something that they've done really well that I want as inspiration for my next dish? And it kind of starts with that. And then I'll usually just like it's all done by pen and paper. Usually I'll just sit down and I'll write the recipe or write the title of the recipe out, what I want to be included ingredients wise, and also the kind of things like the factors that I want it to be. So is it quick and easy? Is it perfect for midweek meals? Is it preppable? Can you put it in the freezer? Is it cheap? Is it cheap things? Is it store cupboard things? Like all of the kind of reasons why I would want to make it and why other people might want to make it and why it might fit into supper club or whatever it is that I'm putting the recipe out for. So that's how it comes, probably similar to sequencing a yoga class. You might have the peak pose in mind, an arm balance or an inversion or whatever it is. And then it's it's an hour-long class, you're breaking down that pose into, if you're doing twists, you want to make sure you're having twists in the class and all of those kind of things. If you're doing back bend, if it's a back bend pose, you want to make sure that you're doing heart openers and back bends and stuff like that. So it's working up towards this peak pose, this peak dish, and breaking it down into elements that I find really digestible.
So it's kind of working backwards in a sense. You're working up to it,
Yeah.
but the creation process is working backwards
Yeah,
in a
exactly. And I've
sense.
already got in my mind usually how I want it to look, how I want it to look, how I want it to taste, ingredient elements that I might want in there. So if we're going with the veggie lasagna example, I might be like, I really want aubergine in there, or I really want courgette, but I want it to be roasted first. So I kind of start with the main dish and I can see it in my mind. And I kind of close my eyes and I'm like, okay, I can see it. I'm going to use that backdrop and that prop and that plate, and I want that side salad. And then I'll just break it all down, right down to the ingredients, and then work up from there.
Do you have like an obscene amount of food presenting paraphernalia in terms of like diversity of plate collections, etc.?
Yeah, it's actually really embarrassing when if people come over for dinner, I've got like all my fancy food props and these beautiful plates that I don't eat from. I just use them to take pictures of food. Like I eat from just bog standard, kind of your white plates from, I don't know, IKEA, wherever they are, because I just use them every day. They go in the dishwasher. But then I've got stacks of these shelves of just different colored spoons and different like antique ones and different plates and side plates and little glass bottles and just a loads of stuff. So I try and be as minimalist as possible in my living, but when it comes to moving house, 50% of it is just food props.
You set a scene there where you were going to restaurants and magazines and being quite analytical,
Mm.
understandably. Has that affected to any degree like your enjoyment of food and being in the moment? And I know so many yoga teachers, for instance, that's happened to.
Mm.
They've done a yoga teacher training, and then actually it's kind of ruined their relationship with yoga because it's just become like their business. It's how they put food on the table, and they really struggle to go to a yoga class, particularly a yoga class of the style that they teach because they're constantly
Yeah,
like
I
they have
can
to go to
imagine.
something like Kundalini instead. It's just completely different. Like, has that happened for you at all with food? Can you still be
Yeah,
present when you're out?
I think I'm probably more present than ever because I'm so absorbed in the dish, but in a very kind of analytical way of like, what do I like about this? If it's something that's quite a fancy restaurant dish, it's like, okay, how do I break this down so it could be like a quick midweek dinner if it can be. So I definitely say I'm more present with the food. I don't tend to kind of mindlessly eat when I'm out or grab things and go. So I'd say it was a benefit in that way because I definitely used to do that. But it has definitely at times, and it comes in waves, but at times really affected my love for food because if I'm I don't know, making a book or working on a book or writing a load of recipes, you're constantly doing it for an end product rather than just for the passion and joy of creating something where there's no pressure on it. It doesn't matter if it looks sloppy on my dish. Sometimes I can catch myself being like, oh, when's the last time I actually baked for fun? Not to take a
Hmm.
photo of it, not to critique it, or if I'm recipe trialing, not to pick it apart, but just to bake for fun. But I find what helps overcome that is because I'm generally creating recipes for people. So to share on an email list and on a website, and I've got other people in mind, it feels a lot less selfish. So it's not something that I'm just doing for myself. It's like, how is this going to help other people in their day-to-day life? How is this going to make, a busy single mum help her kids pack lunches or get some more veg in spaghetti bolognese or whatever it is? So that generally helps a lot. But yeah, there's definitely been times where, yeah, if I finished a big project or something, I will just eat beans on toast for a solid month, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like just completely lost the kind of creativity, or my creativity battery is right down. And it will come back. It does always come back, but it's definitely not always waking up and just absolutely loving the whole process.
For a lot of people, they have kind of like mental obstacles when it comes to like
Mm,
even being bothered to cook. And I'm perhaps
hmm.
one of them. Like I eat very fast. My wife eats very fast as well. So we've never like put meal time on any kind of pedestal. And often the food will be like lentils, meat, just stuff thrown in, flavoursome, mainly because I just soak it in olive oil and chili. There's just lots of that in there. And it's enjoyable, but very minimal. And for
Hmm.
instance, an example of my diet today, I've had like that German style rye bread, you know, the one that's kind of rectangles and flat.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
the one. Yeah.
so just put it in a toaster, like just enough to make it harder. Put some guacamole on it, some chili hummus, and then rocket and chicken. And I've had that three
I mean, that
times
sounds
today.
delicious.
I've had it three times,
Yeah.
and it's taken me all. And then also, as a bonus, as a little treat to myself, while my little boy was eating his dinner, I helped myself to some of his fish fingers, and that was my
Oh, absolutely snap.
that's been my diet today. So as a starting point for someone like me, what would you advise? And when I say artist, I don't necessarily mean a meal, but what kind of things could I be like adding to the diet? What kind of, is there any like tricks, any hacks, any spices, any vegetables that perhaps I should consider adding just to make things a little bit more interesting?
Yeah, I mean, lentils are great because they are like, I mean, they're nutrition powerhouses, but they are just like these a sponge for flavors. So spices, olive oil, like you already mentioned, it just soaks up all of the flavor. So I love lentils for that. And usually what I recommend when people say to me, like, look, I'm trying to add more variant to my diet or my weeks, the recipes that I create, but I just don't have time. I'm not really that fussed with what I eat. I'm pretty plain. Um, would be to start with things like spices and herbs. So even like scrambled eggs on toast, so they're a really simple dish, but you can change up so many ways by adding, things like ground cumin on there or paprika. You can add different spreads underneath. So anything from, like Marmite, you can add hummus under there. Different herbs, so like parsley or basil or dill, they all add their different flavors, and it doesn't take any more time because you're still recreating
Mm,
the same dish. It's still scrambled eggs on toast, but just by adding different spices, different herbs, playing about, having a look online, seeing what's there, getting different inspiration from places, you can make it so it's a different dish every time, and it doesn't take any more time or require a whole new load of skills or anything like that. And that's something that I tend to do actually when I'm creating new recipes. All my energy tends to go on those new recipes, and then the meals around it are just basic, simple things that I eat every day, but I might change it up a little bit with, spices or herbs or something like that.
nice. Do you want one thing you didn't mention there is banana in scrambled egg. Have you encountered that before?
Oh, I haven't. I've never
It's a,
had, but I can
it's
actually imagine that that would be quite nice.
it's something my sister weirdly recommended for our child. So she did it for her kid. I don't know where she got the recipe from. It's weirdly good. So we
Yeah,
do
I
that
can
for Sunny
imagine
quite a
that would
lot,
be very nice. Same kind of texture, isn't it? It's like a soft and really palatable
and
texture.
and it almost feels like a dessert in a really weird way.
Yeah.
Like I'm not on board with it entirely. Like, I've never made it for myself, but I've
But
occasionally
if
like
my
snacked
son's
on
having it, I'll
leftovers.
have some.
Yeah, I'll scavenge.
Yeah.
I'm a scavenger. I'm a food scavenger. Let's talk about your audience. We talked about kind of the demographic a little bit, but it can be quite
Hmm.
lonely, can't it, to some degree? Like
Mm.
creating
Yeah,
content
definitely.
digitally, and I know you have some interactive experiences, but I would love to talk about like how someone that is in the digital world, without any kind of direct colleagues per se. I'm sure there's people you work with, but without any kind of direct colleagues, like how would you connect with the community in a way that builds community, but also in a way that satisfies you?
Yeah, it's probably one of the most difficult factors of moving into what is now um, my work, because it is like I live by myself, I work by myself, and yeah, my lifestyle's changed so much in that it's not going out socializing every weekend, going on benders, all of that stuff. It's changed drastically, which I think is a really good thing. But on the other hand, sometimes the only people that I see day to day are like the lady at the supermarket checkout, and even then most checkouts are now self-automated, so you kind of go through by yourself and you've got your headphones in or whatever. Or I'll see faces at the gym, or if I go to a yoga class, which is quite rare in person now, but they're the only times that I tend to get kind of um, in-person contact. So it can be really lonely. But I do find with social media and like my email list, I'll send an email out every Friday with new recipes, and a lot of the time you'll get people replying and either asking questions about the recipes, or, and what I love is when they say, I've tried this, I loved it, and here's a picture. And
Nice.
it's so personal. Yeah, it's really nice. It's really personal. Sometimes they tell you their stories behind it, and it might just be something really quick and easy, or it might be something more sentimental. But it tends to be all online connections. I do events once a month, like live cook-alongs, which is really nice because like Zoom, you can see faces in there, you have an interactive chat box and everything. I've done a few things which are in person, so in person day retreats, weekend retreats. things like that, which are really fun and just complete. They will fill my cup up for weeks going and kind of be a big reason to keep doing all of the lonely stuff, I suppose. But it is something that's incredibly difficult.
On those Club newsletters and the like, I've
Mhm.
noticed that you say you include lots of like non-recipe stuff. And there's obviously news, non-recipe, and like musings as well. Like, how do you decide what to include on those? Where does that
Yeah,
inspiration comes from?
it's so funny because I've been sending that email out for about 5 years now, and my friend was the one who prompted me to like, you need to start an email list and start sending it out every week because not everyone's going to see what you post online and stuff, and sometimes Instagram goes down, and then what you're going to have. So I started doing it about 5 years ago, and when I was building the newsletter, I just kind of went off what I was already following, and I don't subscribe to many emails, but I kind of took aspects and inspiration from other emails, which I really liked. So Tim Ferriss has a quote I'm pondering at the bottom of his, and
Yeah.
I love it. It's the bit I scroll down to first, read it before scrolling back up and reading all this other stuff. And I really wanted to include it in mine, even though it's got nothing to do with food, just because I really like those kind of tidbit quotes. And I think that they can sometimes stick, sometimes they're irrelevant, but sometimes they can stick with you for a while or, mean quite a lot or just help you through difficult phases or help you to shift perspective and stuff like that. So I thought I'm going to add, I have three new recipes every week, and then I have a quote I'm pondering at the bottom, and I have brain food, which is, I really like reading books. I love listening to podcasts. I've got music playing all the time when I'm in the kitchen. And if I'd ever shared things online, but people would always ask, what book is that? Or what playlist is that? And so I started including that into the email list as well. So it's predominantly food and recipes. It's got three of them in there. I've got a little intro that I put in maybe a couple sentences, and it might be what I've done that week or things I'm working on, new events or t-shirts, croissant t-shirts or something like that. Then it's got the three recipes, then it's got the brain food and the quote I'm pondering. And I get so many email replies about the quote I'm pondering, either I really needed to read this today or it really resonates with me and stuff like that. And it's funny because I so nearly didn't put it in because I was a bit like, oh, is it a bit cheesy?
Hmm.
Does anyone else care about stuff like that? But I'm really glad that I put it in because it's something that yeah has had a lot of positive feedback. And I think it's quite a nice way to round off an email. So it's not just here's some food.
It's so nice that people respond to you. 'Cause that
Yeah.
can be quite rare. Like for me, to be honest, if I've got a decent sized newsletter, I might get like less than five. A nice and to anyone listening, if you subscribe to like a newsletter written by like an individual creator, they absolutely love it when you ask questions or respond. I do similar to you, like some like 'cause I love Tim Ferriss, and I would do like some quotes, etc. But I also tend to do like a not long form, like medium form bit of writing on something like an expanded bit of writing I'm pondering on. I do actually put quite a lot of time into it. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, it takes a long time to build
and
them.
one or two people say, "Oh my god, it's amazing," and I can see people must like it because they open and click it and don't unsubscribe. But I don't really get much interaction. So yeah, if anyone listens to anything by a creator, not listen to, but listen to as well. If you listen to a podcast by a creator, but just let them know if because so many times, like I think you said to one of your social media, you don't make money directly from social media, uh,
Yeah.
and I think people forget like how much work creators maybe put in that isn't paid. Like this podcast, 100, it's a huge amount of work. 120 episodes. An hour interview, at least an hour researching people, thousands of pounds worth of equipment, setting it all up,
Hmm.
etc. Then the process of editing it, editing the graphic, the video, the reels is probably another like 2 hours work. It's really significant. And so it's so lovely when, like, as you said to yourself before the podcast, you said to me before the podcast, that you came up the once when you listened to an episode and actually said you enjoyed it. And that means a
Yeah.
world to people to know that people are consuming your content and enjoying it. And again, you get a little bit of interaction on social media through likes or shares, but in person or via like a dedicated email, it just feels so personal, doesn't it? And it feels so much more rewarding.
It really does, yeah. And it's definitely inspired me. So now, like after, I went to your yoga class a few years ago and came up to you after to say I really enjoy your podcast. But that's all been inspired by people reaching out to me and me thinking, wow, someone's really taken the time out of their day, and I'm sure everyone's busy to sit down and read, write a really nice might be 5 sentence email, and it might just be, thank you very much for this recipe. It's my first time baking this weekend, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. And I just think it just makes you feel like you're not sat at a laptop sending an email into space. That there's someone at the end who's appreciating it. And there's times when I've been like, oh, is this email worth it? It does, like you said, it takes so much time and it costs a lot of money. And the more your email list grows, the more it costs because the domain or the platform
Which never
you
used to be
need
the
to
case, did
spend
it?
more
Like, it's a
to
new
get.
thing that they
Never
charge
used to
so
be the
much.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I know. So it really, sometimes I've thought of giving it up or just stopping it. But it really keeps you kind of going, especially when, we've had bad weeks, or there's weeks sometimes where everything I make just is not at all how I wanted it to turn out. And it's time wasted, it's money wasted, it's ideas that you suddenly get really in your head and think, oh, maybe I'm not any good at this anymore. Or maybe, people aren't interested in it. And so just that little email reply can really make a difference. And sometimes I'll put at the bottom of the email, PS, if you want to reach out, if there's anything you want to see recipe wise, if you have any questions, or you just want to say, hey, feel free to reply to this email. Because I think a lot of people think if you click reply that it goes into outer space, it doesn't actually come back to the
Mm.
person. So sometimes I'll put a little prompt at that in the bottom, and yeah, that helps.
You've been doing all this quite a while now. You said from since iPhone 5. So
Yeah.
yeah, you've been doing it a long time. Like, has there been points where you found it hard to keep going? Like you said, you nearly abandoned the newsletter, and are like, have you ever
Mhm.
had kind of any like existential crises? And how did you get over them? Whether it be like thinking, oh my God, there's so many young people now creating so much more engaging content, or whatever it might be, or the algorithm changes, and are like, uh, there's lots of obstacles, especially in the digital landscape, because things change so much.
Mm.
And I see people doing those like stories so well, which are just like
Mhm.
a million clips of their day with a narrative. And I just can't do that. I'm like too old. I'm too old to do that. Like, if you had any crises, then how have you overcome them?
On the regular, I have crises on the regular and think like, what am I doing? Or how am I going to change this stuff? Or like when I first started doing it, and I just taught myself food photography, and it took me so long until I could take a picture with a proper camera and edit it on proper software and think, I don't hate that. And just as that happened, Reels came into Instagram, and it was no longer about the photo, it was about the video. And I just was like, oh my God, the world is against me. But I think actually now just reframing it into being like, it's, the only constant in life is change. And it's just reframing it into how can I adapt my style and what I want to offer and what I provide to now fit this new format. So whether it's digital format, whether it's doing more on emails, whether it's, learning then how to film reels and do all of that stuff and just continuing to build skill sets. That's probably made the most difference. But I think especially online, and I follow so many food creators, and you always are looking at their stuff and thinking, that's beautiful. I love how they've done that. I like that edit, and taking it as inspiration for your own. But also appreciating that everyone's on their own journey, and probably always thinking in their own head, this isn't good enough, or
Mm.
I didn't like that, or that didn't get as much engagement, or something like that. And I'm quite fortunate because if a post doesn't, do well, quote unquote, it doesn't affect my business. It doesn't affect my income. Whereas if something does really well, it also doesn't affect my business or my income. But I know people who work with brands, for example, and if a photo or reel doesn't do well, then the brand stops working with them. And I just think,
Mm.
gosh, that must be so much pressure. So on one hand, I'm quite fortunate in that the pressure is mostly just myself on myself and not other people or brands or,
That's nice.
bigger people.
And you can, just as a side note, for anyone listening who deals with like posts that don't do well, don't ever delete them, but archive them. If you archive them, you still get all the likes and the interactions saved. Whereas if you delete them, it's all gone. That's a little tip.
Yeah,
Archive,
I,
then
I
delete.
tend to just leave mine up, and it's always the ones that I don't think are that good that tend to do well, and the
Oh,
ones that
really?
I'm like, oh, I'm really pleased with that, and they and they don't do well. But I just leave mine up because I just think what's the saying of the book? I can't remember. It's the 10,000 hours. You're just doing another.
Mm.
It's just another rep. It's just another rep, and it doesn't matter. if no one's going to look at it and no one else looks at them and is like, oh, how many comments does that have? No one else is looking at it like
Oh, are
that.
they not? Are they
Um,
not? Who knows?
well, if they are, it doesn't matter
I
anyway.
I have a 10,000. I have a
But
10,000 rule of if I get less than 10,000 views on a reel, it's gone. Unless it's pure advertising, which is always going to do worth. If I get less than
Mhm.
10,000, I'm like, okay, I don't want that saying, and I shouldn't, but I do. Cool. Right. Let's move on in another direction. Okay. So let's talk about the online platform you have. Okay. So I just wondered, not about the platform. The platform is yoga, lots of food stuff naturally. But then I was looking through it, and then there's a bit where you kind of went rogue, and there was like how to hang plants, and it's all creative. Like, how did where did that idea come from? And is that just an example of you thinking, I really like it, so I want to do it? Was it one of
Yeah,
those moments? Yeah.
pretty much. Like I'd started making recipes, and then just as lockdown, we were going into and coming out of lockdown and going back and forth and all the rest. I started doing online events, so online cook-alongs for people to join and learn how to make banana bread or whatever it is. And I had a friend who was a yoga teacher. I'd done my teacher training with her. And I thought, why don't we do something? And I thought of the idea called Bend and Bake, which is where people come along and it's maybe an hour long and they bake something and then they have like a 10 or 20-minute yoga class and it was beginner friendly and all of the rest and all the yoga studios were closed and it did really really well. And then I started adding on to those events and adding like a creative element to it, so it might be like what you'd seen, a macrame plant hanger, or like I made these daisy bracelets in one, and it's just things that I have seen, like something creative that I've seen and I thought I really like that, and I'm going to teach myself how to make it. And if I know that if I can make it, anybody else can. And it's that process of having an end goal, so a daisy bracelet, and breaking it down to really simple step-by-step formats. And then what we do now is I put all of the materials in I make like a little boxes up, like these goodie bags almost. So they've got all the materials they need, and I post it out to them so they can join from. We've had over like 28 countries join, and they can all join live. Or you can watch back on the recording, and you spend a Sunday morning, usually once a month, making something either sweet or savory in the kitchen. Then we'll have a yoga flow, 10 or 20 minutes, and then we'll do something creative. And it might be painting, watercolor. Sometimes I outsource and get other people in to do, what they're really great at and that I love. So it can be that pottery making, bracelet making, plant macrame hanger making. There's loads of stuff that we've done, and it's just a really nice, fun, creative element. But for me, it feels the same as making a recipe. It's that creating something from scratch and having something at the end of it that you can be really proud of.
You you on your Instagram account have lots of kind of fitness related stuff as well.
Yeah.
As in not like fitness teaching, but you doing fitness stuff. And do you like you mentioned earlier like Jimbos and the food that you offer like isn't for Jimbos. It's nice food that is kind of wholesome and alike. And I wondered like do you follow any kind of regime or rules or guidance with what you eat? Uh, to to support the fitness stuff that you do.
Yeah, I suppose I do. Like I have a big interest in fitness and I've always loved strength training and I started doing that before I then moved into yoga. And now I do both of them and I find that they complement each other really, really well. And I have a lot of friends who are gym bros. And one of them in particular, he really helped me when I started creating my own recipes. He had his online personal training platform and he was like, hey, can you create some recipes for me? But I want them to be quick, nutritious, and kind of specified at like high protein and that kind of stuff. And it's how I generally tend to try and eat anyway. So I really enjoyed making those. And in terms of food rules and stuff for myself, I don't have any particular rules anymore. I've tried probably every diet and vegan and veganism and vegetarian and paleo and everything in the past. But now it really just comes down to what I enjoy, what works for my lifestyle, and what feels good within my body. So what feels good fuel. And those are the things that I really enjoy. But I enjoy eating well and I do enjoy yeah, feeling nourished and feeling energized. And so a lot of my recipes will be centered around that. But I also have a very sweet tooth and
Hmm.
enjoy baking. So there's definitely lots of brownies and stuff like that in there. And I really like and make a conscious effort to make them using kind of regular full fat, full sugar ingredients. I used to make all of the high protein brownies with the whey powder and all of that. And I always just found that the end product never satisfied my craving. I wanted a chocolate brownie, and instead I had this kind of rubbery,
Mm.
chocolatey-ish tasting powdery brownie. And so I would just end up eating three of them rather than just one, and not really enjoying them, rather than just one really good one that I'd made or that I'd bought and just really enjoying it and feeling like I'd scratched that itch almost. Um, so I suppose I don't cater specifically for gym bros in the stereotypical, boiled chicken, rice and broccoli diet. But I do definitely try and make a conscious effort on, yeah, making them nutritious and making them, high in protein where I can.
What do you? I just thought then. I just imagining you cooking brownies, and I thought, what do you do with all the food you cook? Because like you might have a week where you just cook so much, including baking
Hmm.
so much. Like, where does all of that food go? Do you like just give it out on the street? 'Cause I feel like there must be loads of it. You can't possibly like consume all of it.
Yeah, it's probably the most common question that I get asked, but I probably only make, unless I'm doing something like working on a book, I probably only make two or three new recipes a week, and they tend to be a mix of um like something sweet, so a bake, and then two savory things, so lunch and a dinner or a breakfast or something like that. So I will always eat what I make, and I've had to really loosen up the food rules, I suppose, around like what constitutes as breakfast. Like I'll have a Thai
Mm.
green curry for breakfast, no problem at all if it's what's in the fridge, if I made it last night. But most of the recipes that I make to fit my own kind of lifestyle, and the people who I suppose are part of Supper Club, um, are people who tend to kind of like meal prep and want to be able to freeze things and stuff like
Okay.
that. So the majority of my recipes, including brownies and bakes, are ones that you can freeze. And so my freezer is full, top to bottom, of all of these random things that I've created over the last couple of weeks and months. But in terms of my fridge, I'll just like you end up eating, the same kind of meal three times in a row, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's not the best, but it works. It works, and I do supplement. I supplement. I've started to take a supplement called IM8, uh, which is kind of like a new version of Athletic Greens. It's available in the
Mm,
UK, but it's all imported from America. David Beckham's involved in it,
yeah, I haven't heard of
etc.
it.
It's IM8. I think it launched in like November. Uh,
Okay.
Completely transparent with what they put in it, which other
Mm,
brands like Athletic Greens aren't, and like
mhm.
quantities, etc. And the team who've created it are like NASA scientists, and it's obscene level. It just hasn't got to the UK in terms of pushing it yet. Did you ever try?
Yeah.
Because you say you like Tim Ferriss and you tried all the diets. Did you ever try the slow carb diet by Tim Ferriss?
Yes, I did. I read that book and I did try lots of beans in there.
Yeah.
Lots of beans in there. I did, yeah, I did, and lots of fasting in there. I did try it. I can't remember how long for. It was years ago, and just didn't really love it. But I think more than anything, just I found it quite bland. And
Yeah.
I am a foodie. I look forward to food, to my meal times. I look forward to having something. It doesn't need to be fancy or anything. Just as long as it tastes good and fills me up. That's all I'm really concerned about. And I just found it a little bit bland.
Yeah, even like he
Um,
didn't allow any artificial like sweeteners at all. There's no artificial sweeteners in it at all, because apparently that stimulates something that makes you hold on to fat, or like so that's what I found the hardest bit. I like my sweet drinks, or at least some flavor.
Yeah, I mean, I probably don't have that many artificial sweeteners, and when I think about it, like I don't. Well, when I'm in child, I like to travel a lot, and when I'm traveling, I like to eat out and all of that stuff. But when I'm here and when I'm home, I hardly ever, apart from my pastry shop every Friday, I hardly ever eat out. So most of the food that I'm having is I'm cooking and making from home. So it doesn't tend to have lots of artificial sweeteners and stuff like that in, but definitely not oppose them.
Right, let's do some quick fast now. What is your quote of the week that you're sharing on your newsletter, or just shared on your newsletter?
Oh, I'll read it. I actually scheduled it just before this call. I've got a whole notes page dedicated to quotes. And every time I see one or I read one somewhere or I read one in a book, it's funny because the more now that I am looking out for them, they just appear everywhere. But the one
Do you
that
categorize them
I
out of interest? Do you categorize them in your notes, or are they just all in
no,
a row?
no, I'm not that organized. They're all just kind of like sifted down, and sometimes I'll kind of sieve and try and find one, but usually I just pick one of the most recent ones that I've heard or yeah, read that week. But the one that I have got this week is if more money wouldn't change how you spend your time, you're already rich.
Nice. Nice. That's a lovely. If more money wouldn't say it again, if you could.
If more money wouldn't change how you spend your time, you're already rich.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, I love the idea that kind of wealth is only useful for as long as it gives you the time to do the things you actually want to do. And
Yeah.
we've talked to a lot of guests about this idea that ultimately, if we put down on a list the 10 things we'd like to do more of, most of them often are free. Like walks with friends, walks with family,
Mm.
going swimming, doing the sport that we love, etc. You know, most of them are free or relatively low cost. Uh, the fact that you just need the money to pay the rent, etc. No, that's a lovely one. What misconceptions do you think people have either about you or your offering?
Oh, probably that I cook everything from scratch 3 times a day.
Of your books, if you're going to recommend one of them as a starting point, which one would it be? Of your books,
It would, yeah, it would probably be the pink one, the first one. It's called Food for the Soul.
and why that one?
Well, it's my first book, so when I was writing it, I had in the back of my head, if this was my first ever cookery book, and I didn't get a cookbook until I was probably 24, 25. If this was my first ever one, which recipes would I want included in there that are really going to help out with my, day-to-day life, that are really going to make a difference and that I'm going to enjoy? So yeah, probably that one.
It sounds like you're someone who's quite into kind of like life hacks, like listening to podcasts, etc. Is there any kind of like habit you're trying to introduce to your life at the moment to improve it in some sense?
I like to think I have a pretty, I call it a baggy routine, like a baggy morning routine, because sometimes I might have an hour, sometimes I might have 10 minutes, but there's elements that I always try and fit in there. But something that I'm trying to do more of is phoneless walks, which I find really difficult because I'm useless at multitasking. So I don't text and walk or anything like that. I'd be run over by now. But I do listen to podcasts and listen to music. And what I found is that when I don't have my phone on me, or if I have it on, but I've not got headphones or anything in, is that you actually pay a lot more attention to your surroundings in terms of just like British springtime and hearing
Mm,
birds and hearing leaves and hearing, the crunch under your feet and that kind of stuff, or cows if you're in the countryside. And those kind of things, which are so small and so subtle, but really make a difference in how I feel, especially if I'm going, on a morning walk, if I'm listening to a productivity podcast or a finance podcast or like, a lifestyle podcast, it can be constant. You feel like you're constantly learning, 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 or working, working, working. And just to have like a proper break
mm.
from all that kind of stimulation, I really benefit from that. So I'm trying to do more of those.
Nice. I think there is a difference between not using your phone when you walk and then also knowing it's not an option. Like actually not
Yes.
having it with you. The knowing it's
Y-
there, I think, is always in the back of your mind and always trying to
Yeah.
pull you to your pocket.
Oh, 100%. Oh, I'm just going to check this. Has this person emailed me back? If I'm doing one locally around Cheltenham, I can do it without my phone because I don't feel like I'm not safe or
Mm.
anything. But if I'm going out into the countryside in the Cotswolds and it's like 6 in the morning or something, I'll still take it, but I'll probably put it on do not disturb and just keep it in my pocket.
I want to not a shout out like I'm in any way linked with them, but I recently bought something called a brick. Again, imported from
Yes,
America. Have
I've
you heard of
heard
them?
about it.
They are good.
Yes, I've heard of
They
them.
are the solution. They're amazing. So they are for anyone listening. You know, you get all these
I'm
apps.
gonna write that down.
You get all these apps that, in theory, stop you accessing certain apps that you like. Instagram, they block them in theory. Or you can even on like native on the iOS, you can stop using certain apps after a certain time of day or after certain hours. But they're so easy to bypass. All of them are just so
Just
easy to
click
bypass.
ignore. Yeah.
Whereas a brick is like a physical thing. So if you were going for a walk in the country, you'd have that brick, let's say, stuck to your front door. You would brick your phone. It would go onto a setting that you have chosen that only gives you access to certain apps. So for me, like if I'm out, it still gives me access to like maps and parking and banking and my doorbell and alarm system, etc. Like practical stuff that I would need when I'm out, but no WhatsApp, no email, nothing like that, no junk, and it's really game changing. And I've got them in both cars and one in the toilet. Uh, it's so good. It's so, so, so
I
good.
love,
So,
yeah, I love the sound of that because often we think that it comes down to discipline and, just not doing it. But I think these devices, as everyone knows, they're set up by people, their entire job is to bring your attention back to
mm,
them. And so it's not usually through lack of discipline or lack of willpower or anything like that, but just the way that the devices are set up so that they pull your attention back, even if like I
mm,
don't have any notifications on or anything like that. But if I open up my phone and I go towards an email or something, it'll pull me in all of these different directions. And just by staring at my screen, I'm like, oh, I meant to put this down in my notes, or I meant to take a picture of that, or whatever it is. So I really like that idea.
yeah, we heard of the book Indistractable by a guy called, it begins with
I
N.
have,
Yeah, that kind of
yeah, I
talks about. So
have.
he was
Is it
one of those people.
Naval? I can't remember his
No, it's
last
not
name, but
Naval.
yeah.
In fact, I've got Naval's book next to me right now. That's supporting my light, but yeah, it's not Naval.
Oh, what a
His name is
coincidence.
like near Ni. It's like a
Oh,
three letter name.
near
Something.
NIR.
Yeah. And either way, it's
Yeah, I
called
have got. Yeah,
Indistractable,
I've read the book.
and it's a good book. But I also think we don't actually have infinite willpower, and of the limited willpower we have, we may as well use it for things that are it's fundamental, like going to the gym or whatever, or doing meditation and like whatever. If there are hacks that mean you can bypass a need to have willpower, I think do them much in the same way as, if you're meditating, you leave your meditation cushion out. That's just like a
Hmm.
bit of a hack that just takes away a little bit of the resistance, meaning you don't have to put it as much on a pedestal. So I'm a big fan of using any hacks I can so I don't have to use willpower where possible.
Yeah, me too. And the whole, wearing the same stuff day in, day out, it works. Laying it out the day before, that kind of stuff. It's just one less thing to choose.
And can you tell people about what you've got going on and where to find you and your books, etc.?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So where to find me on social media? My handle is Lord Lucy, which is just my last name and my first name. That's the same for my website. So where all my recipes are, it's www.lordlucy.com. And then at the bottom of the page or on a pop-up, there's an option to sign up for Supper Club, which are the weekly emails that have all those little snippets in. And usually I announce anything that I'm doing there, whether it's new merch or a new event or something like that. I'll always announce it on Supper Club first. But yeah, those are the main spaces.
And buying your t-shirt.
Buy my t-shirt. Yeah, the croissant t-shirts for anyone who can't see. They're going to be available at the end of this month with some really cool socks as well. We've got other t-shirt designs and everything coming. So they're on. I've got a separate business called Slow Sundays, and it's like a wellness and lifestyle business as well. So they're going to be on there, hopefully, or they will be because they're on their way by the end of February. So yeah, it's just a fun little thing. I've worn it out quite a few times, and people always comment on it, and I think it always brings a smile to my face.
No, that's for sure. I'm sure it'll do well. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you for your time.
Honestly unbalanced.